People of Reddit, when is one time you have felt genuine, 100% fear? I was riding my bike home from work along a pretty busy main road. I live in the city. I got to a downhill and started to pick up pace when I noticed a brown snake, which are very deadly, lying across the bike just lane ahead of me. There was a car in the lane next to me and it was too late to stop, but I somehow managed to dodge the snake and kept riding. About 50 meters later, just as I thought I was safe, I heard a very loud hissing and felt something rush past my leg and thought the snake had somehow caught up and bitten me. It turns out my back tire burst, but in the moment I was absolutely terrified. The time I got into bed with my girlfriend and immediately started coughing up blood. Ran into the bathroom and held onto the sink for dear life. Every breath I tried to take I just ended up wheezing more blood out of my lungs. By the time the ambulance got there I had pretty much come to terms that this was how I died. Then it slowed down and finally stopped by the time I got to the ER. Long story short, it turned out to be Hodgkin's lymphoma. Had chemo for 6 months and am cured now with minimal repercussions. Scariest time of my life. I was flying an airliner. We were maybe 1,000 above the ground while on approach to land at a smaller airport. There were thunderstorms in the area and we ended up in a microburst with zero visibility. We got a wind shear warning in the cockpit and started to go around. At full throttle and the nose up we were still sinking at around 400 ft-min. Everything seemed to be running in slow motion. Both me and the other pilot were running through our required actions and callouts due to the training. In the back of my mind all I could think about was I can't see the ground and we are falling. I know there is a hill out here somewhere. This is where I am going to die. The plane got down to around 400 feet off the ground before it finally started to climb. This was the most fear I had ever felt in my life. Lost control of my car when I was going 80 on the highway. Some guy tried to rapidly merge in between me and the semi-truck in front of me, and I had to make a quick adjustment to keep from hitting him. My car started rapidly swerving as I tried to regain control. At some point I realized I was going to crash, and there wasn't much I could do. The one thought going through my head was don't hit the semi-truck. Don't hit the semi-truck over and over again. I couldn't stop the crash, but I managed to force my car to swerve into the concrete barrier parallel parking style. No damage to the car. No one else involved. I was unhurt. I consider myself to be very lucky. I think I've felt that a couple of times so far. Here's one of those occasions. When I was about 10 years old. On a normal school day. During the last hour our teacher gets called outside the classroom by our principal. I remember seeing how worried the principal was. After a couple of minutes the teacher came back, calmed us down and told us very calmly there is a bomb outside the front door of the school. There was a silent panic that swept across the classroom as she proceeded to tell us to hide under our desks. We waited about an hour after the army and bomb diffuser team showed up. Then one by one the families came and picked up their children. I had to walk home alone. I experienced a heart attack with the age of 21. I thought I'd die during the experience. The pressure and pain in the chest. The numbness of my arms. I puked and everything went dark. Figures I managed to get my heart infected. Everything swelled up and I had water in my heart valves. Not native, excuse me if that's wrong. That's what caused it. I was 100% sure I was done shortly before I went out. I also was alone in Chiang Mai, northern Thailand, preparing for a multiple-day jungle trek. I went to my BnB after getting dinner and a guy pulled me into a small side street and showed me a knife and started to talk in Thai. As I started to unbuckle my backpack some young guys came into the street and chased the fucker off. They apparently saw what happened. I bought them drinks afterwards. David and friend, I am still grateful if you ever read this. Edit. That's the second time I nearly got robbed while traveling, but I was alone that time so it was more terrifying. When my son started choking. He was about 9 months old and was eating his standard wheat cereal with milk for breakfast and was happily munching away. Then all of a sudden he just stopped. He went silent. Totally silent. There was no air moving. It was f***ing terrifying. Luckily I've had children's first aid training and that and mum instinct kicked in. Slapped him. Hard. On the back with his head pointing to the floor with him over my knee. Multiple slaps. Clog of cereal dislodged and he was able to breathe again. We both collapsed on the floor in tears. Had cuddles and generally recovered. Then he wanted to carry on eating his breakfast. He's a trooper. The night I thought my abusive ex-boyfriend was going to kill me. He had been drinking and screaming in my face demanding I tell him where his gun was. I hid it before he got home knowing he was intoxicated. Thankfully, the upstairs neighbors heard him screaming and throwing me around and called the cops who showed up before anything serious could happen. That time when a guy stalked me. I was walking to my brother's house. Headphones on. So at first I didn't notice him. He followed me for several minutes. Then grabbed my shoulder and started yelling at me like a damn possessed. He was yelling that I was a whore. That people like me should die and things like that. I was pretty sure he was gonna beat me up. But after that looked like hours of yelling he released me. I ran like I have never ran before. Straight to my brother's house. Crying all the way. I was on a roller coaster. My belt didn't close and the train began moving so I screamed for him to stop. It was 100% fear. I had something similar happen to me. My long hair was caught in the mechanism and we were about to shoot upwards. Think of like a power tower. Screaming to stop the ride. All I could imagine was it snapping my neck if it shot up. The guy did. And I actually had to get cut out. Never again will I wear my hair down to an amusement park. Not sure if it'll help you feel better or worse. But it's more likely to scalp you than break your neck. Last winter I was in the back seat of a truck with my friends. I was in the middle seat and like an idiot I didn't use the seatbelt. We were driving on the highway and over a bridge. We hit ice. All of a sudden we're skidding to the edge of the lane. And I see the 2-foot tall cement wall on the edge getting closer and we're about to slam into it. I knew we'd of course break it and go over. And I knew I was going to die. In 2 seconds I thought this is how I'll die. I wonder if it'll hurt. If I'll die instantly. If I'll bleed out. Of my friends will die around me. I knew I was going to die. And then we bounced to the wall. Spun. Hit it again. Spun. And hit it a third time before stopping. The entire thing. From hitting the ice to stopping. Took like half a second. But I knew I was going to die. Everyone was okay. Surprisingly minimal damage to the truck too. I got dengue twice. Which is a painful virus in Southeast Asia. There are only 4 strands of dengue and if you survive one you are immune to that one for life. I survived the first one and was in my bed for 2 weeks. I felt paralyzed. I couldn't do anything. Using any technology gave me a headache. I recovered completely fine. And then a few months go by and I caught dengue twice. If you don't know, catching it multiple times is a lot more dangerous. I had internal bleeding and my life was a misery. I was genuinely fearing. I obviously recovered. Really well actually. Better than most people. This time it took a month to recover. I ended up having vein issues in my left kidney and testicle, but I had to get surgery to cut those veins and basically force my body to use other passages. If you catch it, get medical help and you will have a pretty good chance at recovery. However, the fever spikes you get from it are something different. If you are an active person it will take ages to get back into sports. I've had quite a few run-ins with work-related incidents. From rigging failing with a dozen tons of steel overhead to being crushed by a machine with overridden safety interlocks. The ones that really spook me are rotating masses though. Lathe crashes are just a matter of getting away from the chuck as fast as humanly possible and trying everything to stop the awful booming sounds. Well, if that wasn't enough, I picked up a job doing centrifuge repairs. After the better part of a year I got tasked with rebuilding a horizontal centrifuge. Imagine a 55-gallon drum made of 1 inches thick steel spinning at 3,500 RPM plus, and after rebuild I start it up and it reaches full speed. Then hell breaks loose. There are solid carbide tiles inside this machine and they all broke off in the span of 2 seconds. The machine started shaking like mad, and while I wanted to shut it off, I had to run behind the currently runaway machine that could rip itself apart to do so. That moment had me crouching and terrified as I made my way to the disconnect. The first time I heard a gunshot after surviving being shot in the face with a 9mm. It was over a year later. I heard the shot while talking to my BF, and I immediately just stopped talking, turned around and bolted for his car. I got inside and started hyperventilating, crying. It took me quite a while to actually stop breathing so heavy. But he talked me through it and calmed me down. True fear, followed by intense embarrassment. I once woke up with my diaphragm cramped up and basically almost completely unable to breathe, and with an unreasonable pain in my chest. I was cold as hell and sweating profusely. I could not stand up and every position hurt terribly. Lying on the side like a fetus hurt the least. I was sure I was going to die. After a few minutes of panic though, I was sort of okay with it. The situation resolved itself in about 40 minutes. But they were not pleasant. 20 years later I still remember the sensation. 1. Being shot at and hearing the sound a bullet makes when it whizzes by near you. 2. Being chased down a back road by someone in a huge lifted pickup truck trying to ram my little compact car off the road. He hit me twice and I only got away by swerving into a driveway at way too high of a speed. And 3. Waking up to hearing my apartment door kicked open. I've known a lot of fear. I guess. I came from a place where nonconformity can cost you your life. Seeing my abuser from childhood again. Every time he'd somehow weasel himself back in, because my parents never knew what he did, and I saw his face, I would get this cold, nauseous and tight feeling inside, normally accompanied by being sick and locking myself in my room. Everyone assumed I was just an antisocial kid, which was partially true. But being a CSA survivor who was repeatedly exposed to my abuser again and again sure didn't help. I was afraid to sleep without someone else in the room. Refused to undress unless I was in a room with a door that could be locked, and avoided being in any space near him at all costs. That's fear. P.S. Came back to this after rest and was surprised to see how many people had similar if not the same experience. While it's awful that so many people have had to go through what I did, if not worse, as a small child, it helps and really means a lot that so many people are more kind and understanding than what I ever would have thought. Thank everyone for the kind words and support. You are appreciated. You are valid and you are loved. Never forget that. When I was 10 and my mother had a nervous breakdown, she spent the entire night hitting and kicking me while making me tell her I hated her. She's take a break to cry in th bathroom. Ordered my sibling and I pizza. But the breaks that night were short before it was back to the abuse. Honestly, that was one of the worst nights of my life, and even after years of therapy I still have nightmares over that. It was seeing her expression change so rapidly they got me, and how quickly she snapped. When I was younger, around 15-16 maybe, I was home alone. We own a dog. So most noises you can just say. It was the dog. But that night the dog was laying with me in the bed and I heard a noise downstairs. Me being the paranoid FCK I am already had the baseball bat from my brother next to my bed. I grabbed it and went to the stairs. And I saw a light flashing by. It looked like a flashlight. So I grabbed the baseball bat tighter and had tears in my eyes, but I went downstairs. There was nothing. Everything was alright. It was my biggest fear, but at the same time the biggest relief I've ever had. Still, I wonder where that light came from. A car would be impossible because the street is on the other side of the house and lights from the neighbors as well. So there's that. When I was trying to sleep at around 3 and felt someone press on my bed. Then bag on the chair started shaking. Then again I felt something on my bed. Finally I had the courage to switch on light and found a giant rat on my bed. Damn. Did you keep him? I think he's the rat's pet now. In Soviet Russia. Rat own you. When I was 8ish I was home alone and thought there was a tornado. I thought I was gonna die. I hate tornado season. Some people are so blasé about it. Then you get a tornado that rips through town and all of the people who died. died because they were driving around completely unaware during an active tornado warning and their cars got thrown off an overpass. I do everything in my power to not be on the road on days when there is a high tornado threat. And if I am on the road, the radio is on the channel where they are giving weather updates, and if I'm on the phone with anyone, it's someone who is safe at home and tracking the storms and making sure I'm not driving into a tornado. When I was little, me and my brother were sleeping, and my mother came in the room telling us to get down on the floor quietly. We then saw a light from outside. Someone looked at our window exactly. I felt huge fear. I took a metal pipe because I knew I couldn't run away. So I had to fight. The lights were gone. My mother got outside while I thought she'll die. Turns out it was my dad pranking us. I was with my ex-boyfriend. He was telling me how much he trusted me and how good I was for him. Then he looked at me and said he was about to tell me something he had never told anybody else. His stare was like ice. The only way I can describe it is that I felt how water must have been frozen when Elsa shot ice into her heart. Anyway, I glared at me and smiled and said I constantly think about killing people. I kept my face blank. I thought I was about to die. We were home alone. Oh. Is all I could get out. Yeah. Ever since I was a kid. All the animals I caught in my yard, I'd rip them open and play with their insides. I said that's normal. Kids are curious, trying to lighten the mood. That's when I broke his stare. He grabbed my face and forced me to look at him. He kinda chuckled. I don't think you understand. I almost killed my parents. Hell, I get pretty damn close sometimes even now. I think about killing you too. But not because I hate you, don't worry baby. Just for fun. And I think it's hilarious that I'm telling you all of this because I know you won't leave me. You need me, you're so codependent. You'd probably apologize for bleeding on me after I cut your throat. I said yeah, probably. I broke up with him 3 months later. No one I've told has believed me. So I don't expect anyone here to either. But it was my moment of 100% fear. I have developed some issues due to traumatic brain injuries. It's caused the darkest thoughts in my head, and I tried to commit suicide 2 months ago. I have a wife and 2 kids, both under the age of 4. I am a shooting instructor and have a good concept of firearms and how they function. I tried to shoot myself, and there was a misfire. The split second of realizing that I'm not dead, and the reason why, instantly made my whole body extremely hot. I started to shake, and I broke down. I never told anyone this, but that moment sticks with me. It was extreme fear mixed with confusion, relief, and disappointment all in one. And X200B. I hate the simple fact that I'm even typing this out. I was hanging out at night in my fort with my friends in the South Jersey swamp as a young teen. Suddenly the swamp went silent. It never goes silent. At night it's loud and only the things in your immediate vicinity shush as you pass. This was complete silence as far as we could hear. In the same instant, we looked at each other and just panicked. We all were filled with a sense of absolute terror. No words were spoken. We all just bolted back to the neighborhood as fast as we could. We never knew what happened. We never felt stupid about it either. We all know something was off. But to this day, over 40 years later, I've never felt fear or panic like that. And have never heard nature go silent again either. During sleep paralysis and sensing there was something in the room with me, I had a sleep paralysis incident where I saw and felt the rake. Look up if you haven't heard of it. Climb onto me. I was trying to scream but I couldn't. When I woke up I was genuinely convinced that it was real, as I could still feel where it touched me. I pulled the blankets over my head, BC obviously nothing can get you if you're under the blankets, and laid there unmoving and panicking for at least an hour, convinced it was still in my room. I've been terrified of that thing since I first read the story years ago. So OFC, my brain was like, hey, what a great thing to see during sleep paralysis. Double quote. When I was 8 years old, the place where we lived had a really creepy basement with wood for our furnace, light switch at the bottom of the stairs, and really steep stair steps. Being 8, I smashed the light switch and started sprinting up while holding a bag with wood over my back. Me being clumsy as always. Stepped over due to the heavy weight of the wood and stumbled down from the top. The floor was made of concrete. I woke up some time later without knowing how long I was unconscious for, and I couldn't move my legs without screeching with pain. I also destroyed my back pretty hard. So I just couldn't get up. It was pitch black and I didn't know where in the room I was. Hours went by. Pitch blackness. I felt I was going to die alone in darkness. I screamed and nothing. We had rats in our basement. Unbeknownst to me at the time, as this was on the property of a farm. So every now and then I heard noises. Heard something move. Suddenly extremely close. Suddenly from afar. Being 8, this was extremely frightening. My stepdad ended up finding me. He got annoyed I didn't come with the wood, so he decided to get it himself. I was down there for 4 hours. Don't know how much of those hours was spent unconscious. But that was the time in my life where time went by the slowest. My 2-year-old son having a seizure. He went to bed fine. Woke up in the middle of the night very hot. We took his temp. 102. 3. No way. That must be wrong. Check it again. 102. 6. Suddenly, his eyes rolled back and he started shaking. We rushed into the bathtub. No idea what to do. Panic. Tears. Overreaction time. Call to 911. Rushed to the ER. Not my best dad moment, but genuine. 100% fear. I was trapped in a house with a drunk friend. And 2 men who clearly wanted to have sex with us and were trying their best to make me drink from a, probably spiked, glass. I was sober that night and could think straight, so I refused anything they were trying to give to me. And they looked extremely agitated at my refusal, but I was adamant on not taking any substances. It took me 2 hours to get out of there. When I forced my way out, they looked at me with the creepiest stare and said, "You go. Your friend stays." I can never forget how terrified I was. I later found out from my friend that they had tried their best to touch her and pay her whilst I was trying to figure out how to get us out. I was away from her for 2 minutes. She had gone to the toilet. I was on a commercial flight and the pilot came over the tannoy to tell us luck wasn't on our side today and there was an emergency with the flaps and landing gear not working correctly. And that we would have to fly around to burn off the fuel. There would be lots of emergency vehicles to meet us when we did land. But not to worry too much, as he'd recently done this emergency in the simulator. Passengers were crying and panicking. No one felt reassured. I genuinely thought we were all going to die. There was a random week in my freshman year of high school where depression just hit me hard. I had lost all of my purpose for living and was really sad for one day. Then I just started not enjoying anything. Even food. This led to me being just in a neutral state of mind for practically everything. What sucked is that I knew this was not normal, and the only moments I actually felt something was when I was effing terrified that I will never feel again. That's all I felt in those moments of emotions. No happiness. No sadness. No anger. Nothing but fear. I got better when I found my purpose to keep living again. We had a shortcut in my neighborhood and it was a climb down a forested hill. One day I was waking down with my friend at the top talking when all of a sudden I see 2 big ass dogs come running at me and I had a effing heart attack. Pure fear, but they came and licked me. They were 2 nice big dogs who got out when their owner left his gate open. There's a prairie path near where I live that has some houses along one side of the trail for about a mile. Me and my mom were walking. And all of a sudden 3 mastiffs come running at us and barking, incredibly deep. Booming barks. They ended up being friendly too. But it was super scary. I'm not afraid of dogs at all. But I was terrified in that moment. When my wife was in labor, she shot out a blast of blood that coated the doctor during a hard push. The doctor said, "We need to get this baby out now." Suddenly there were 10 nurses in the small birthing room. My wife pushed our son out the rest of the way and they started cleaning him up. The doctor explained they couldn't get her bleeding to stop and they needed to do emergency surgery. An anesthesiologist came frantically into the room and started telling my wife the risk of general anesthesia so he could proceed for surgery. Basically my wife had torn along her entire vaginal wall. She kissed me and our baby and they rushed her out. It was now me, my brand new son, and one nurse left in the birthing suite. As I was doing skin to skin with my son, the nurse stepped out to get an update for me and I played Lava in Rose on my phone for his first song. I didn't really know at that point if she was coming back. I was terrified. Everything turned out fine. My wife was brought back after an hour and a half. The nurse came back and told us it was the worst tear she'd seen in 30 years.